Hey y'all, I'm Jennifer Purcell, and tonight I am chatting with Kristi Woods, the author of A Perfect Match from our latest issue, Love is a Battlefield. Kristi authors stories about Jesus and other heroes in contemporary Christian romance and nonfiction. Her award winning work is published across the internet and in print, including her gift book, 101 Prayers for Military Wives. Kristi, her Desert Storm pen pal turned husband, and three now adult children survived a nomadic military lifestyle and have set roots in Oklahoma. There, she keeps a close watch for tornadoes and rich, creamy chocolate. All right, Kristi, let's start by talking about the inspiration behind A Perfect Match.
Oh, good. Well, my husband's retired Navy, so it was kind of, and I write about heroes and which includes military and first responders. And so when I saw the theme, it was perfect for what fits my branding. And so I just dove right in. The Navy Ball was something my husband and I had attended when we were active, when he was active duty. I had heard a story recently from somebody I know that about a sibling. It was different than what my story ended up being. I switched it so that it wasn't the same, but that kind of spurred an idea, which then translated into a perfect match.
Love it. I love when real life events
Mm,
inspire stories. I just love that so much. Now,
right.
this is obviously a contemporary story, but I'm curious, is there another subgenre of romance that you find yourself reading instead of contemporary, or do you gravitate toward contemporary?
I definitely gravitate towards contemporary. I do like, though, some rom-com as well as some women's fiction. So I border with those a little bit, and I'll hover over, put one foot in a little bit and then back out. But contemporary fiction is my mainstay.
So, are there any contemporary romances that you've read lately that you just really enjoyed?
Yes, I have a few. I was a huge reader, and then when I started writing, I scaled back a little bit. So there's fewer books right now. But Nicole Deese is one that I read pretty much everything she puts out. Becky Wade, of course, I read almost everything. And one of my critique partners, Lori DeYoung, she's a newer author, but she's an award winner, and so I'm busy reading her work while I'm critiquing it. But I will tell you, she writes a great story, and so I'm soaking all of that in. And she writes in contemporary, so it's right in my main genre that I love. So it's perfect.
Love it. All right.
Mm,
Um, Now tell us, this was obviously it was brother's best friend for your story, the trope. But
right,
I'm curious,
right.
is that your favorite romance trope, or do you like something else?
All of them, honestly, because I married my Desert Storm pen pal. Pen pals is a big one. I find that when there's something a little mysterious or maybe, not face to face right away, I tend to love to write that way. But, I like any of them. Enemies to lovers is a fun one. Friends to lovers is another really great one. So, just give me a good story and we're good.
So I'm going to be nosy here for a minute, Kristi, and I hope you forgive me. But how long were you and your husband pen pals?
We were pen pals for about 2 years before we met in person, I think, or maybe it
Oh,
was, a little, yeah, like it was in I'm aging myself here. Okay. So it was 91. I was a senior in college at the time, and I wrote off letters. Dear Abby, who was a newspaper columnist, had a program that you could write to any service person. And so I loved writing letters. So, hence why I like the whole pen pal thing. But I sent out 3 or 4 letters, and they made it to different service people. And my husband Tony and I just continued to write. And then we had a chance in the second year to talk on the telephone. He was still active duty at the time. So, and he was stationed on the other side of the globe, basically. And so it was a little harder, but we did. And then the third year, well, second year was in person, or was phone calls and in person. And then a little bit more in the third year, and we got engaged. And the fourth year, we got married. So
oh, that's such a sweet story. I love that.
it is. And I didn't see a picture of him for a whole year. So I was writing this man that I didn't know what he looked like for a year, but I came to know who he was through his words on the inside. And I found that I fell in love with the man that he was from on the inside. And so it all developed from there. And I mean, we're like best friends. So I'm grateful. We've had 31 years of marriage. Coming up here in just about a little over a week, we'll celebrate our 31st anniversary.
Oh, well, happy early anniversary.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, I have to admit, I'm a sucker for that too, because that's how my grandparents met.
Oh, really?
Was through pen pals when he was in service. So that's so sweet that they weren't the only couple. You know, I know that other people meet similarly, but you don't think about it until you start talking to each other and you realize that all of our experiences aren't exactly unique, even though we like to pretend that they're unique. But then there's a few differences. Like this was back in the 50s, and you know, the life was a little bit different back then.
Right. And that's cool. Very cool.
Yeah. All right. So let's switch from romance and talk specifically just writing for a second. I'm curious, what's the best piece of writing advice that you've ever received from someone?
Oh, there have been so many. I've had what I call this kind of posse, if you will, of women warriors that have surrounded me, because I started off writing nonfiction and felt like that was going to be my genre. I would be there forever. I wrote freelance, and I wrote for magazines and different things. And I just thought that's where I was going to land and be forever. And then the Lord kind of knocked and pointed me towards fiction. And I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Because this could totally become an idol if I'm not careful, because I could devour books at the time. Reading one in a weekend was easy. Now that I'm writing and critiquing it, that's harder for me to do, just to be honest. But anyway, so with lots of prayer, I stepped forward into it. And that kind of opened doors. And I'm going to have to ask you again, Jennifer. I'm so sorry. What was the question? I started talking and I got excited, and then I don't remember where I was supposed to head.
It's okay. What's the best piece of writing advice you've received?
Got you. Okay. So then once I maneuvered into fiction, I had these amazing women surround me. And some of them you probably know their names and some of them you don't know. But God just kept adding them, and they kept building me up, speaking encouragement over me, giving me advice, instruction. I mean, just amazing things. Robin Patchen was one of those first ones. Laurel Thomas was another one. Then Renee Gutteridge, and then it went on, and I had Betsy St. Amant Haddix spoke into my life, and then Jennifer Slattery and Beth Vogt. So there's just, and more. I know I've missed some, but those are just some that really have spoken words over me, that they have experience and they're ahead. But with all the advice that they gave me and everything, I will say the biggest, the one that I remember the most and made the most impact was from the Lord. And when I wanted to give up writing, and it started with nonfiction because I faced rejection, and that really was like nails on the chalkboard to my heart. And I didn't know if I could withstand all those rejections. And then it maneuvered into fiction once I had to learn the fiction craft, which is very different than nonfiction writing. And I thought, here we go again. I'm going to face these rejections, and I don't know if I want to do that again. And there were 3 words that the Lord spoke to me when I prayed the prayer, "Are you sure? Because I really want to quit, Lord." His response was, "Stay the course." And so I did. And so that was the biggest one. And in nonfiction, it took 8 years to see a book come to fruition. I think it might come a little bit quicker with the fiction, but we shall see what happens with all of that. But there's some great stuff on the horizon, it looks like. But stay the course. Yeah. So when you're discouraged, stay true to that calling that he's put you to, and stay the course.
I love that, because this can be a very discouraging road.
Right. It's a lot of emotions, right? Up and downs, and
Yeah, you're like, oh, I want to write a book, and you think you're going to see it in Barnes and Noble in a year, and that's not how it works out.
Right. I mean, we're talking probably years to learn the craft well, often. And then there's the whole publication curve, which that can take a couple years, 3 years, 4 years, depending.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that fiction and nonfiction are different. And I agree with you, but I'm curious if you can expound on that a little bit and tell us at least maybe like 2 differences that you've noticed between writing something that's nonfiction and writing something that's fiction.
Sure. In a fictional story that's really good, there are certain things that have to be in place in certain places within the story, generally
Mhm.
speaking. And so I really had to learn, not only is there, the plot, but there's a romance arc, there's a faith arc. And so you kind of have to multitask while you're writing this story. Okay, are my characters developing, and are they starting to see their crescendo the way they're supposed to as far as their faith goes? Same thing with the romance. Are we going too fast? Are we going too slow? Or are we crescendoing just right, or up and down? And I think with nonfiction, it tends to be a little bit more single-minded, if you will. I don't know if that's even the right way to say it, but you're really just focused on, okay, well, what pain point does my reader have, and what message am I trying to relay to that pain point and address it? And in fiction, that was nonfiction, and in fiction, it's all of these different arcs and making sure that everything gels at the same time the way it should.
Yeah. So I know each one has their own set of difficulties and
Sure.
challenges. But to you, which one do you find to be maybe a little bit easier, or maybe even just like maybe a little bit more fun and freeing might be a better word?
Yeah, so I find fiction, surprisingly, because I never expected to write it, to be more fun. I'm enjoying the stories. I kind of visualize the characters, and like a first chapter kind of comes to me, and that's where I start with my stories. Nonfiction is actually easier to write for me, and I still write it because in fact, I just finished a guidepost piece this morning. So I'm still in that arena as well, but those tend to be a little faster, and I'm able to get a hold of those a little easier. But I also think some of that might be on the fiction side is because I'm still new and I'm learning. So, ask me in 5 years, and that answer may be a little bit different.
Yeah, I can understand that. So, what does your writing process look like? Because there's this whole debate between pantsers and plotters and being
Mhm.
in the middle. So, what does your process look like?
Mhm. I'm still figuring it out. I'm a newer author on the fiction side, so that's a part of my journey, is still trying to figure out what that looks like. But I'm working on a manuscript right now, and I've actually sectioned it off. And I don't know if others do this or not, but this seems to be working for me this time. And I go through and I will dictate on my audio 5 chapters, and then I go back in and I layer in the parts for those 5 chapters and send those to my critique partners, and then move on to the next 5 and do the same thing. Now, prior to that, I wrote a synopsis, which basically helps me know
Mhm.
overall, step by step, where the story is going to go. So the plot, basically. And I found that was actually very helpful for me versus being a pantser where I kind of let the story just flow. I think I'm not that kind of girl. I think I've learned that. So I definitely would lean more towards the plotter side. But I think I have little. I've not far plotter. I'm a little bit more, towards the middle, but definitely leaning plotter. So.
I wonder if that's influenced by you writing nonfiction. When you write nonfiction, do you usually have like an outline in mind before you start writing?
No, I should, but it also may be the type of writing that I do, because
Mhm.
my book was prayers, and so they were all small little sections of their own. So if I was to write a Christian living book that maybe has 20 chapters or 30 chapters, it might be a little bit different.
Mhm.
But because I write short pieces for like guideposts, or the book like 101 Prayers that has these individual prayers, those kind of are self-contained. And so I really just think through, okay, well, what point am I trying to make? What pain point for that reader does this need to address? And then tie it up with that. So.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Mhm.
So, we're getting towards the end of our time. So, before we go, I wanted to ask, how do you believe that your faith kind of intertwines with your stories?
Oh, for sure. I feel, I'm at the beginning, but I've already written a manuscript that I'm working on to get it out and see where it will go. But I see in other stories as well that there's one big common thread, and it really seems to be that there's a voice of wisdom in the story, usually an older character, And I really equate that to kind of the Holy Spirit and that wisdom. Not that they are, but they're kind of representative of the Holy Spirit's wisdom. And I see that in the stories because I feel that that's such a powerful part of our life when we're believers, to lean heavily on that wisdom from the Holy Spirit. And so I love being able to include that in a story. And I think you'll probably see that fairly frequently in the stories coming from me.
I love that. I've never thought about that voice of wisdom before, but you've definitely, I feel like you've got a point there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Where is the best place for readers to find you, Kristi, if they want to keep up with what you're doing?
Sure, I would love to keep up with them. In fact, I respond to all emails at this point. So come on and join me at kristiwoods.net. Sign up as an insider and you get firsthand information. And you also have access to my subscriber library, where I have right now a couple of free flash fiction stories people can download. I hope to add more with time, but because I'm still newer in the fiction arena, those are still coming. But there's also some nonfiction things as well that you can download there. But that's the best place. I'm on Pinterest. That's another good place. I'm on some of the other social media, but not as much. So it's really better to join me on my newsletter, preferably because we can have a little more interaction there.
All right, awesome. Now, because Memorial Day is next week, I feel like with you being a military spouse, I would be remiss in asking you to just share maybe like one thing. And it doesn't have to be like super personal. It can be some like broad experience that you had, maybe a fun place that y'all were stationed at. But can you tell me just like one little thing about that experience?
Sure. We had some great duty stations. I was with him 19 years of our military service, and he was in 24 and a half. And we had some great
Wow.
experiences. Yeah, but Hawaii was probably our best. We were stationed at Pearl Harbor, and we lived on Fort Island, which is the little island in the middle of Pearl Harbor. And I considered it Mayberry. I mean, it was great. It was a great place to raise our kids for 3 years. And the history, unfortunate, but was still rich. I mean, the stray things from the bullets from World War II were still in the concrete. We lived the first row of houses from the Arizona and the Missouri. So all of that was in our front yard, basically. And, just Hawaii has an amazing beauty that I've not experienced anywhere else on this earth. So God's really made an amazing place with Hawaii.
Yeah, I've heard. I'm jealous. I've heard that
Yeah.
Hawaii is like fantastic. But I bet y'all got really good at moving.
You have to, whether you want to or not. That was actually a really stressful time, and that's some things I've been praying for on some of my social media, or I'm getting ready to post. Actually, is it's PCS season, which is permanent change of station, which is moving season for the military. And so stress levels are probably pretty high for a lot of women right now that are military wives. It's great because you get to see so many places, and that was definitely a perk. And you purge because you learn to not cart as much stuff around. But on the flip side, things get broken almost every move, and keeping treasures is a little harder that way. And sometimes leaving people can be hard too. But God also showed me that it's kind of like a stew pot. With every move, he was adding new ingredients and making it even richer and better. So, I think when we just continue to look to him, whether it's for our books, our writing, or just our life in general, it's a good thing.
I like that piece of wisdom.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a good note to end on. If you have not read Kristi's story yet, I'm going to put the link in a comment below so you can go check it out. And voting ends on Friday. So if you really, really like it, you can go vote for the Reader's Choice before that poll ends. But thank you all for joining us, whether it was live or you're watching the replay. I hope you gleaned some good pearls of wisdom, because I know I did, and also added to your TBR, which I feel like I do every single time I talk to a fellow reader and writer. So y'all have a fantastic week, and good night.
Night.